All right, thank you, Stephen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this hearing to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, the Cree, the Dakota people, and then the national homelands of the River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. Introducing the panel members via Zoom is Laurie. She is present. I'm sorry. Laurie Davidson, and via Zoom is Mr. Ian Mahone. Our secretary, recording secretary is Stephen Lunn, and representing the city from the assessment department is Travis Gretchen. This morning we'll be hearing an application for revision of the business assessment role in accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application. And we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent, along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application from exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the points of appeal with your properties to be addressed with each of the applicants following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. All information all hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. This morning, we'll be hearing items 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I asked Mr. Lund to affirm the assessor and to the applicant's testimony. Mr. Lund, please.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Travis Gretchen.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Ayrton Neufeld.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to proceed with the docket. The first one up is 488 Burnell Street. Mr. Assessor, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
All right. Good morning, everyone. The file number for the first property is 22-4696, roll year 2023, address 488 Burnell Street, business assessment ID 18475. We have a total annual rental value of $156,780 with 21,972 square feet, with an overall ARV of $7.14 per square foot. You'll see on my brief just below that the premise or the building is broken up into two premises, one 12,903 square feet, the other 9,069 square feet. Between the two rents, or the overall blended rent, would be $4.63. And below that, you will find that I have 6 comparables. The lease start dates range from 2012 to 2020. The lease term ranges from 4 to 10 years. The area ranges between 18,000 and 28,000 square feet. and the reported rents range between $4.60 and $5.50. Moving to my page 2, there's just a map of the location for the subject property. You'll see it's in the northwest quadrant of the city. And on my page 3, there is an overhead view showing the parcel and building and a street view showing the building. And that concludes the presentation for 488 for now.
I thank you, Mr. Getchen. Mr. Newfield, questions of the assessor?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Davidson?
I did have a question. Could you please tell me if the area and the net rent that's per square foot that you've used is aligned with the realty assessment?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yes, is the areas that you've used in the 2 premises and the net rent per square foot, is it aligned with what was used in the realty assessment, or is it consistent with the realty assessment?
I don't have the realty assessment here right now. It would take me a little bit to pull up if you'd like.
That's fine if you don't have it. My other quick question was, what distinguishes the 2 premises? Like you have 2 showing, one at 12,900 and one at 9,000 square feet.
So usually when a premise is split up like that, or a building is split up like that, but it's a single tenant, there could be a few different reasons. It could be differentiating between warehouse space and office space. It could be that at one point there was a different tenant and that tenant moved out and then the other tenant took over that space. Or that it was, I mean, I don't think in this case there was an addition, but I'm just giving examples as to different reasons.
Sorry,
Different
what
reasons.
the case is right now? Like
For
at
this one,
point in time?
I don't.
All right, those are all my questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do have a couple of questions with respect to the setup of the premises. I'm looking at the photograph. Is this a 2-story with a basement premises, or can you answer that? I'm looking at the lower picture on page 3. It looks like there's 2 sets of normal sized window or good sized windows, and then.
Yeah, so it looks like that could also be, and that's probably the reason why there's 2 PIDs. It looks like there is a 2-story building at the front. And then it looks like from the middle portion, there is almost like a breezeway or storage area. And then the back building is a lower ceiling height and has more of like a garage loading bay.
Okay, and from that, you've got 9,069 square feet at $420 per square foot, and the 12,903 at slightly higher rate at $494. Which area pertains to which amount, or do you know?
Off the top of my hand, I don't know. Once again, in our system, it's just broken up into those 2 areas. My assumption would be that the larger building, 12,000, would be the 2-story building, and then the 9,000 area would make up the remaining two portions there, the garage area and the kind of the middle area.
Okay. My last question pertains to the square footage overall. Your square footage, the 12,903 and the 9,069, is slightly higher than what the applicant is calculating. Where did you get the square footage areas that you're using?
So our square footages come from, in terms of premises, will always come from our system where anything or everything is entered in terms of building characteristics. So at one point or other, these characteristics would have been provided to us by either a tenant, a building owner, through drawings or floor plans, or an income expense mailer.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I thank you. Mr. Gretchen, to do a little follow-up in regards to Mr. Mahone's question. According to your records, has this square footage always been this figure? Do you know offhand?
I
In the
don't,
last,
I don't offhand, but that's something I can check pretty quickly here.
yeah, if you don't mind, because I see that there's a discrepancy, so we might as well talk about that. So in the last few business appeals or realty ones, whatever you're looking at, has it been 21,972?
So my first premise, 12,903 in the year 2022 is there. I'm just gonna pick random years and go back a little bit and see if there's any change, but it looks pretty consistent here. 2020, 12,903. 2017, 12,903.
Yeah.
I'll do one more year here and see how far back we go.
And that's probably just the main floor, and the 969 is upper.
2013, still 12,903.
Okay.
And I'm just going to check the second premise here and see if that aligns as well. Yeah, 9,069 in 2013. So those two areas date that far back at least. See if I have anything that.
That's good, Mr. Gretchen. That's good. Have you been to this property at all?
I have not. I have not had
No.
a chance to inspect. I'm just
Okay.
going to initiate right now. I have not inspected any of the properties on the docket.
All right. So, but you have looked at the applicant's pictures, have you not?
Yes, I did.
Or-
I got his evidence
Yeah.
yesterday, and I did see some of the photos there.
All right, we can have him talk about that. Thank you very kindly. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Thank you. We had our measurements provided by the owner. I was just looking through all our old briefs, and it looks like we've always had a disparity in the area, and it's never really been resolved. This was given to us by the owner for the measurements. I'm assuming they were at some point measured at that, and maybe perhaps the city changed it at some point in their brief, but I'm not really sure exactly how to pinpoint where this area that they're getting came from. By and large, our major difference, other than the area, is the rent on the rear portion. I called it upper and main, but that's just copied from another property. This is the like main and rear, I guess would be the best way to put it. In my page 2, you can see the front portion is a loft warehouse. It's a solid piece of property. It's that portion itself stands up quite strong. I think it's in use as a print shop, but I could see at one point in its life if somebody wanted to redevelop it into a loft warehouse. It does have some bones that are usable, but that would just be the eastern portion. If on my page 2 you can see the irregular portion with the white roof, that was an addition at some point, probably 60, 70 years ago. If you scroll down to my page 13 and 14, the 14 is the rear shot of it, and the 13 is where they actually meet. It's not the greatest picture, but this is where the additions meet in the interior. And if you can sort of squint at my bottom picture, you can see daylight coming through there. That it's shifting so poorly. The picture above doesn't really show it, but that actually was my attempt at showing it sloping downwards, and you can't see it whatsoever. But this rear portion does actually slope downwards, and it has a bit of a continuity problem. They would, I would say, I think if this was to hit the market, its highest and best use maybe is a redevelopment, and I don't think that rear portion is something worth salvaging whatsoever. It's tricky to find rents for it. I think realistically the best you would do is a storage rent. We do have a number of loft warehouse rents on my page 4. They are a lot. They're older. It's a bit tricky to always be finding these ones, but you do find low storage rents at about $2 or $1. One I want to point to is 312 William, June 2017. A bit smaller, a bit better situated at $1.11. It would be a similar style of storage in a loft warehouse that doesn't really have a whole lot of repurposing. And that fundamentally is our difference. It's in the area or the rent on the rear portion. In the past, I was just looking through an older brief. In the past, there's been a bigger, like this, they set it, the assessments, I think they're at $496 for the front portion and $420 for the rear portion. In the past, there's been a bigger gap. I'm looking at $506 and $397. So I don't have that as evidence, but I mean, I'll just to say that it has been treated the rear portion has been seen in a lesser light in the past. It just seems that the model brought it a little bit higher this cycle. And that's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Gretchen, questions of Mr. Newfield?
No, you know what? I'm good for that one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Yes, I was wondering about your comps that you're showing on page 2, I think it is. So you have 2 different rental rates for the 2 premises, one being 5, one being 2. So I'm assuming the 2 is that piece that you showed us behind.
Yes, that's correct. And then
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And that's used for warehouse. That's not where the print shop is it?
No, the print shop's actually throughout all of it. It's a one very large print shop. It's I guess that's not really clear. If you walk in, if you see my very first picture, that's actually what you see when you walk in. So it's I guess a cubicles for the print shop. And then that second picture is the back portion of, let me just see if I can match the windows. I don't think the rear portion had windows like that. I'm just trying to see.
So looking at your comps, because you have 2 premises with quite different rental rates, and there's the print shop running through it, which are the best comps for premise 1 and for premise 2?
I think it's tricky to find because you're not going to find often that these are together. But I think for premise 1, we're looking at I mean in the area where I just had it, the 1041 Aaron at $6. That's somewhat in the area, and it's just probably the same kind of user you'd be looking at. The construction itself is very different. I think that's very challenging to find a loft in that area. You'll often see them be in the exchange and either to be redeveloped or as a storage rent, which is actually that small table on page 4. And these are all much more comparable in quality. But realistically, we do see that there is some value that this front portion could rent for a $5, closer to what you see in single standalones. I think Aaron makes sense as the St. James isn't so bad, although smaller. Border is more of an industrial style, multi-purpose. 47 Gomez might actually work. Let me double check that one. Yeah, I mean 47 Gomez is more of a warehouse. It's the buildings itself, you'll see, are closer on my smaller, much lesser quality table at the bottom of page 4. However, we do recognize that there is some value to that front portion, so we've used industrials in.
So are any of the ones that, like the ones that you gave first, that are comparable to your premise 1, the 12,150 at $5, are any of them used for print shops at this point?
I do know that Border has the 1347 Border, actually, I believe, is Dave Quickprint.
I guess I'm wondering, like, does a print shop have any special requirements? No. Like, is it have a heavier load because printing
No.
machines are heavy, anything like that?
No, not really. My uncle actually owns Galaxy Printing on 1004 St. Mary's, and it's just as basic as a building as you get. It's the equipment itself. It's generally what you're going towards is more digital printing. Even when you do have the old style print, it's very uncommon that you see actual presses these days. It's all gone digital, and even so, I mean, you would have you want to have a good loading dock because you're constantly moving paper in and out. But it's as far as load, it's not much more than a people load. So it could really go in any anything with a door.
Okay, and just one last quick question. Did you appeal the realty assessment on this property?
We did, yes.
Okay. And what was the outcome?
There may have been. Don't have that. I can get it just quickly. I just don't have it in front of me. There was a change of $74,000, and we appealed that. This I do believe, and actually the 2020 is under appeal as well for both business and realty.
So for 2023, did they was the decision utilizing the city's rents or your rents?
I imagine so. Yeah, I think so. And then I think it was a bit of a cap change that we appealed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for answering all those questions.
No problem. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I just have a couple of questions with respect to the layout. You'd indicated that pretty much the whole premises was used as the print shop. The photos that you have at page 11, is that's the rear section, the 9,069 square feet area?
Correct. Yeah, that would be the part with the insulation falling out. That's at the back. So they have box storage and that kind of thing. It all is one continuous business.
Okay, and just again, the two photos on page 12, that would be the, well, what's that?
Yeah, so the sorry.
It's okay.
The bottom picture is the upper portion of that rear, and it's kind of looking out into it.
Okay, so that picture at 12 where the loading door is, that's facing east away from Burnell, or is that on Burnell?
This appears to be this would be the long portion with the white roof there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, you have pictures of the property, and how current are they?
I took those in 2020 or 2019.
Okay. In your estimation, what sort of condition is inside?
I mean, it's fair. I think the front portion, I mean, finished wise, poor. I think structurally the front portion is fair and it's or average considering its age and its construction. The rear portion is poor in construction and finish.
Is it still used as a printing press building or a business going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, this is was it Cromar printing?
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
no, they had it in operation when we were they were running digital printers, but other typesetting and printing when we were in there.
I just sort of looking at the pictures, and it's not really conducive to an operation that should be going on.
I know. It's funny. Like I said, my uncle runs a print shop, and his has papers everywhere, and it looks worse than this. So I think it's just something in the industry where they have to be in this kind of quality of building. I have myself worked in one for a bit, and you're putting things in and putting things out constantly. That I imagine it's a bit of a frantic operation.
All right. I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Newfield. Either party want summation?
I'm good on that one. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, let's go on to the next property, which is 447 Bannertime Avenue. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
All right, file number is 22-4487, roll year 2023, address 447 Bannatyne Avenue, business assessment ID 17985. The total annual rental value is $132,840. The total premise area of 16,006 square feet, giving an overall ARV of $8.30 per square foot. It is a single premise building, and below that you will see I have 5 comparables with lease start dates between 2014 and 2020, lease terms between 3 and 10 years, and areas between 11,000 and 21,000 square feet. Reported rents between $5.50 and $7.31 per square foot. Moving to my page 2, you'll find the subject map. The subject is located central Winnipeg, close to downtown in the Exchange District. And my page 3 includes a street view of the photo and an overhead showing the building and the parcel. And that concludes my presentation for 447 Bannatyne Avenue.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Newfield, questions?
Yes, this was appealed for realty. Do you know if the rent was revised in realty decision?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That's all my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you. Or maybe just a quick one. So you used a 580 net rent per square foot. Is that based on the model?
Correct, yeah.
So it's all modeled.
Absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, and this is maybe a general question. In some of the other hearings, we've seen that the city assessment has aligned their business assessment rents with their realty assessment rents. Is that the case in the properties we're reviewing today?
Usually the rents are aligned with realty. I'm just checking to see if we had this one for a municipal board appeal or not. So nope, there was no municipal board appeal for this one.
Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I just have a question about the comps. I see that Border, St. Matthews, all of them outside the Exchange District. Which of these comps would be, in your opinion, the closest to 447 Bannatyne, or the closest in, not geographically, but as far as value goes?
Just looking at them here quickly, 1266 Border Street. The lease is from 2017, so today might fetch, or closer to the reference date, might fetch a bit higher of a rent, but currently the rent is the same as what we have for this property. All the other comparables are fetching higher rents. Some of the square footages, like as you'll see, are a bit higher there, so that can justify some of the difference in the rent, as well as we covered with the last property. Quality or potential use can affect the rent as well. But I would say, just based off quickly looking there, 1266 Border would be my comparable for, or my most suited comparable for the subject.
Okay, now just a procedural question now with respect to the modeling. When you are doing modeled rents, and I'm guessing that the algorithm or the computer spit out these comparables?
Like there'll be a number of comparables produced when producing a brief that we'll kind of cipher through and look for things like lease term. We're obviously trying to find something as close to the subject lease as possible in terms of date sign, just to find the most current market rents. And then another thing to look at is going to be square footage, year of the building build, et cetera, et cetera. So although I only produce or provide 5, we probably did have any number of comparables.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. We took this into a realty hearing. Building is a warehouse with virtually no land. It's being used as a textile shop. They are knitting and clothing and storage as well. It's a bit of a mix and match in here. My pictures, you can kind of go through and see the operation in here. Old panel. And then page 13, that would be a bit of asbestos and that piping as well. Obviously, the condition, I think the pictures show the condition quite well. It's not, it's not in no way a glamorous property. And I think really the issue being is it started its life as a warehouse, but it doesn't have access to the back portion without going through the neighboring lot. It can access the door technically, but you are actually grandfathering into the neighbor to get onto there because the road doesn't touch them. And then you can really, they have no room to turn around trucks on their own property or that of that nature. It's not a good property for a warehouse in any way. The realty decision on page 3, it was highlighted there. $5 a foot was applied at the realty. Well, Travis and I did have a lot of back and forth on other properties. Most of the ones in this situation we resolved in either 15-1 or withdrew. I think I withdrew one where there was no change. I don't know what happened here. I don't know if it was missed. There was some conversation that we believe that there were some with appeals on the older appeals that we wouldn't be able to do a flow through on for today, but I don't think that was the case here. I'm just guessing maybe it was missed because this was applied at $5, and that's all we're requesting today is that the realty decision be flowed through as it wasn't appealed and it's resolved. So my request is $120,050.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Gretchen, questions?
Not at this time. I was just going to quickly look to see if this was one that we had realty flow through, but my computer's being a little slow today. I don't want to take up too much time looking for that. As Mr. Newfield had mentioned, we did try to make deals or solve any ones where there was realty appeals that had a rent that flowed through. But I'm not seeing that for this property. But it would take me a few minutes to dig up. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Newfield, anything further?
No, thank you.
You okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
You're asking me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the next property, which is 600 Moray Street. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
All right. File number 22-4652, roll year 2023, address 600 Moray Street, business assessment ID 41880, total annual rental value $109,800, total area of the premise 11,369 square feet, and an overall ARV per square foot of $9.66. Below that, you'll see the building is broken up into 2 premises, one for 6,000 square feet, one for 5,369 square feet. You'll see the separate rents there. Our blended rent for the two was $7.32. You'll notice in the lower premise, for 5,369 square feet, we have that recorded as not having air conditioning. So there is no air conditioning occupancy cost for that portion of the building. Below that, you'll find my comparables. I have 5 comparables for this property. Lease start dates are between 2015 and 2019. Lease term is between 3 and 10 years. Reported areas are between 6,500 and 15,000 approximate. And the reported rents range between $7.25 and $7.95. So you will notice there that it is a pretty tight bubble between or tight gap between the comparable rents and what we have, which does indicate that the rent should be supported. On my page 2, you'll see the subject map. So it is located in the northwest quadrant of the city, close to the airport there. And on page 3 are my subject photos. So the first photo is a street view of the building, and the second photo is the aerial or overhead showing the building and the lot. And that concludes my presentation for 600 Morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Newfield, questions?
No, thank you. We're just going to request confirmation for this property. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, given the statement by Mr. Newfield.
Mr. Newfield, you are seeking just confirmation?
Yes, please.
So there's no presentation?
No presentation. Thank you.
All right, let's go to 130 Omens Creek Boulevard. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Gretchen.
All right, file number is 224469, roll year 2023, address 130 Omens Creek Boulevard, business assessment ID 34023, total annual rental value $183,540, total premise area 16,917 square feet, and a total ARV or overall ARV of $10.85. This is a single premise building, and our base ARV was $8.35 per square foot. We do have a subject lease in place here, showing the subject rent is currently $8.20, so very close to our model rent. I do also have 5 comparables supporting this rent, with rents between $8.50 and $9. My lease start dates are between 2015 and 2020. With lease terms between just over, I guess, 1.5 to 10 years, and reported areas between 10,000 and 17,000 square feet. Moving to my page 2, you'll find the subject map. So this property is located in the northwest quadrant of the city. And my page 3 shows the overhead photo with the parcel, building, and lot. And page 4 includes a couple of the street view photos from the building. And that concludes my presentation for 130 Omens Creek Boulevard.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yeah, you indicated $8.20 was the paid rent. Was that from a statement or from a mailer, or how exactly was that calculated?
Yeah, that's usually the subject lease information, if it's included in a brief, would have come from the income and expense mailer provided by the building owner.
The subject has adequate land and amenities, assumedly.
It looks to, it's a pretty large parcel. You'll see in my aerial photo on page 3, There's ample space for, truck turnaround, for shipping, receiving. Also, this would be dependent on the actual business's use. Some businesses may need that, others won't. The rent applied, obviously is based on single tenant using the entire space, and yeah, that covers that.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Davidson, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I have no questions, thank you.
I have none. So Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We are just requesting a small reduction. The realty overall, the rent was confirmed. And that wasn't appealed. However, this is a multi-tenanted, so you've got some that would be higher than the 815 that we're requesting, and some that may be lower. The average worked out. This unit was just a fair bit smaller, or a tiny bit lower than the average. So if you go to my page 3, that's the direct excerpt from the rent roll. You can see that was renewed, or what was paid for 2019. It's a 815 net. I can't really comment as to why the assessor is 820. That's I imagine there was just it was calculated differently when it was used directly from the income and expense mailer. That often happens. But this page, when the rent roll would have been supplied to the owner, an 815, or to the city, sorry, an 815 is in the rent roll directly in it. So just a small adjustment to reflect the rent, 20 cents downwards at 100 for a total of 180,170. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Assessor, any questions of Mr. Newfield?
Just to highlight his point there about the lower rent, just emphasizing the fact that we don't apply actual rents, but these are market rents, so that would kind of differentiate our rent of 820 or his rent of 815 and the market rent applied at 835. And that's everything for me. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Just a really quick question. So based on your numbers and the city's numbers, is it correct that the total ARVs are less than 2% apart?
Yeah, I suppose it looks that way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I have no questions, thank you.
Submission either party?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you.
All right, we'll go to 1650 Inkster Boulevard. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
File number is 22-4673, roll year 2023, address 1650 Inkster Boulevard, and the business assessment ID is 35202. The total annual rental value is $803,040. Total area of the premise, 120,960 square feet, and a total overall ARV of $6.64 per square foot. We do have a single premise of 120,960, so making up the entire building, with a base ARV of $4.47. You will notice for my occupancy costs that only 6,500 square feet includes air conditioning. So that portion is the only portion assessed for, or having occupancy costs for air conditioning there. I have 4 rent comparables. They range from 2015 to 2020, lease terms between 2 and 10 years, reported areas between 82,000 and 148,000, and the rents between $4.98 and $6. Moving to page 2, you'll find the subject map. So this property is located in Inkster Industrial Park in the northwest quadrant of the city. My page 3 includes the overhead, which shows the parcel and building, as well as below that a street view photo of the building. And that concludes my presentation for 1650 Inkster Boulevard.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Newfield?
Yeah, do you have ceiling heights at all for this property?
I do not.
No. I guess then just looking at your page 3, or even my pictures, if that's easier, would you agree that there's a portion of it with considerably lower ceiling heights than the rest of it?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And then do you have the land to building ratio?
I do not have land to plan or land to building ratio.
Okay.
Usually
Yeah.
for
Go ahead.
business
No,
assessment.
go ahead.
Usually for business assessment, that isn't something we're overly looking at. That's
Fair.
usually been covered through the realty, and that rent tends to either flow through or be, in line with the realty value.
Okay. Yeah, no, that and fair enough. I think obviously with business taxes, we kind of look at what happened, and it's not as often.
Yeah. So any user can potentially have a different use for the building, whether it storage, manufacturing, storefront, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, but I mean, today we are looking at what the rent that this building could get, and I think user dependent is not necessarily the case. Obviously, some users don't have as many needs as others, but what we are looking at, would you agree that the land is tight in this building?
I would agree with that. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Yes, could you please tell me if any of the 4 comps that you've provided are in the Inkster Industrial Park?
Just looking at this, I'm uncertain. Sorry, I'm uncertain.
Okay. I guess you don't have any that you're clearly aware that are in the Inkster Industrial Park?
I can search them if you'd like. Penn Hutchings is in the Inkster Industrial Park. The first one. 55. Appears to be in the Inkster Industrial Park. If not, it is on the border. It's between McPhillips and Shepherd. Yeah, so that should be Inkster Industrial Park. 861. Wow. This one is not. Last property, 1530. And Gamble is not. So my first 2 comparables are in the Inkster Industrial Park, so close to the subject.
And with the exception of, thank you for that, with the exception of what the applicant raised about the low ceiling heights and the land to building ratio, are your comps and the subject in similar condition and age, like interior and exterior?
I haven't inspected the comparable properties or my subject property, so I can't make a valid assessment as to that.
And I think I heard earlier when Mr. Mann asked that these comps are generated by the model.
The comps are generated by me. And then I would select, like as mentioned previously, there could be any number of comps depending on how many of similar nature, similar characteristics, leases, etc. And I'll go through and select what I find to be most representative based on those characteristics covered before: lease term, area, building age, rents,
Right.
and the other
Okay, yeah.
characteristics.
Sorry, I think you did say that, so I
No problem.
apologize.
Yeah, no, no
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you. That's all my-
Each comparable or each subject property is still going to have different comparables, and this is a property that is a larger square footage. So you'll find on my briefs, sometimes I'm having 5, 7 comparables. This one I only have 4, and it's just due to the nature of those larger square footages.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do, with respect to the ownership, the lease in place that you have at 447 base annual rental value, is that an arm's length lease between Richelieu Manufacturing, the business name, and the owners, Adelaide Investments, or you know?
I'm uncertain. So between 447, what's 447? Sorry.
Is that not a lease in place, the base ARV, or is this owner occupied? I'm looking at page 1 of your business assessment report. Subject bid 35202, 1650 Inkster. Base ARV. Not a lease in place.
The base ARV is the model rent.
Sorry,
The model.
Help you find a place when I know your location. In security and privacy settings.
What?
sorry.
I'm not sure what that was.
I don't know either.
Hopefully,
Sounds like
Something robotic.
someone's computer talking to him.
maybe my question should be the lease. Is there a lease in place here?
Not according to the brief. I do not have the subject lease in place. So it would be the model ARV model base rent per square foot.
Okay, thank you. I obviously was confused when I was making my notes on this. That was all.
No problem. I also actually just realized I didn't mention that I don't know if I did or not, but the base rent is $4.47.
Okay, thank you.
No
I
problem.
thank you. I thank you. Mr. Gretchen, the subject property is model pricing.
Correct. Or model rent. Yeah.
All right. All right. Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours for your presentation.
Thank you. Property 1650 Inkster is this is Tough Duck, the textile or clothing manufacturer. You're going to see their original property they actually built in 1905, I believe. It's coming up at 121 Gomez. What happened was they were that building itself, number of problems. We'll hear about it, but they were forced to essentially move out, and then they moved here and added to the existing kind of, I guess, warehouse. And if you can see on my page the original rectangular building is that lower ceiling warehouse, and then the addition was essentially added behind and to the right of it there. What that did is it actually made the land to building ratio so tight that it is a much lesser than other marketed properties. Before, they would have had much more truck access, whereas now it's just on the north portion facing Inkster on the eastern part of the property, that irregular portion there. I think they counted 7 truck bays. On the marketplace, this would be have much tighter land than anything else you would generally see being rented. Of course, there are properties that exist like it because it's the owner making use of it, but we'll see. And I did actually go through the assessor's comps. Age and size, they're not the worst in terms of comparisons, but they are all high ceilinged with great land access. I think every single one of them you could drive a full 360 around the building, and they had docks on all sides. So what I would almost contend that the original building here itself is not really being assessed properly in the model, whereas they're kind of looking at the addition, and the comparables do make sense if that original building isn't there, or if it was actually configured much better. I think the configuration of this building is just much poorer than you would see compared to others, just based on that land and the access. My comparables that I sort of pointed to or was looking at, one of them, I would say 680 Mission has similar land issues where it is tight. There's I think a service road at the back in order to reach the rear portion. And then 770 Pandora does suffer from low ceilings, like a portion of this building. None of my comps are tight like this exactly, with the no rear access and just abutting the neighboring property. But I would say that 680 Mission does have some land issues that are similar to this, although not quite as bad. I would contend that this is much worse. And then, like I said, 770 Pandora does have 12-foot ceilings, which is a huge portion of this. Has something similar to that as well. We use 360. Both rents I mentioned were 350, 770 Pandora for a smaller one at 375. And then an even smaller one at 350. So I think we were comfortable for 360 of this property, and that's just based on the deficiencies it has, mainly with the low ceilings on a huge portion of it and a poor land to building ratio with only with a portion of it accessible by truck. Our request for today, the total being 697,800. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gretchen, questions of Mr. Newfield?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, I would just like to disagree with the statement that the rent we're applying is only captured on the newer portion or the higher ceiling portion of the building. Both the land to plan and the ceiling aspects would be addressed through realty, which would then, affect the base rent that's being applied. So any of those characteristics would be built into the model as we're capturing the whole building, not just a portion of it. Going back to my comparables, you'd find that the comparable rents were between $4.98 and $6. So our rent is below that a little bit, or quite a bit, $4.47. So that can be already taken into place, especially the area of the building, almost 121,000 square feet. My only comparable above that is 10 Hutchings at 147,000 square feet, and that has a rent of $5.72. So the $4.47 I would find to be reflective of the land plan that you mentioned, the low ceiling and the quality condition.
I guess just if I could ask a question based on that, I mean, do any of these comparables you have do you have any comps that went into the model that have similar land to plan or lower ceilings?
As mentioned, I'm uncertain of that. There was limited comps based on this square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davidson, questions of Mr. Newfield?
I have no questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do, with respect to the pictures at page 2, Mr. Neufeld. You've described which property is the newer, and that's the one on the lower right-hand side of the aerial view. I'm assuming as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that in the lower picture on page 2, or sorry, the middle picture on page 2, where there appears to be loading docks, that's the newer portion of the property. Am I right on that?
Yeah, that's correct. You're, I guess you'd be standing on Inkster from taking that picture. Yeah.
Okay. And how many truck loading bays are there? 4 or
7.
5?
It's 7. It looks like, yeah. No, one of them. There's a 7 on that door on the far left. It's a bit blurry. I think there's 6 on that are lowered like that. It's just hard to see. Yeah. And
this newer building, I think in your brief it says constructed in 2015. That is joined to the older building?
Yes, that's correct. They, I believe there were loading docks in the existing building that are no longer obviously reachable because there's a building in the way.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Either party one summation?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, let's go further down the street. We'll go to 2525 Inkster Boulevard. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
File number is 22-4483, roll year 2023, address 2525 Inkster Boulevard, business assessment ID 27247, a total annual rental value of $760,140, total area of the premise 96,028 square feet, with a total overall ARV of $7.92 per square foot. The premise area, once again, 96,028, so single premise, with a base ARV of $5.66 per square foot. As noted, similar to some of the other properties, the air conditioning for this building does not include the full premise area. So air conditioning, based on information provided, is for 29,060 square feet. So occupancy costs reflect that. There are 6 comparables for this property with lease start dates between 2012 and 2020, lease term between 4 and 10 years, reported areas between 67,000, or say 67,000 and 148,000, and rents between $5.07 and $6.85 per square foot. The second page shows the subject map located just by Inkster Industrial again. And the third page includes an overhead photo showing parcel, land, and lot, and building, and a street view of the building. And that concludes my presentation for 2525 Inkster Boulevard.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Newfield, questions?
No, thank you. We are just gonna request confirmation for this property. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. We'll go on just a little further down the street, 2529 Inkster Boulevard. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
Okay, file number for this one is 22-4704, roll year 2023, address 2529 Inkster Boulevard, business assessment ID 1474. We have a total annual rental value of $340,980, a total area of 29,730 square feet, and an overall ARV of $11.47 per square foot. Once again, single premise for the entire 29,730. Base ARV for this property is $9.21, and air conditioning again is also for a portion of the building. So 9,280 square feet have applied occupancy costs for air conditioning. There is subject lease here, and the subject lease information shows a rent of $15 per square foot. We, as mentioned, only have a rent of $9.21 per square foot. There are 7 comparables for this property with recent leases between 2016 and 2020. Lease terms between just under 2 years to 10 years, reported areas between 24,000 and 39,000, and reported rents between $9 and $11.45 per square foot. Moving to my page 2, you will see the subject map, again located in the Inkster Industrial northwest quadrant of the city. Page 3 includes the overhead showing the building and lot. Page 4 has a couple of different street views showing the building and access point there to the loading base. And that concludes my presentation for 2529 Inkster Boulevard.
I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Newfield, questions of the assessor?
Yes, thank you. You have reported a $15 rent here. We're using 921. Is the rent relied on much at all, or is it does it factor into this assessment?
As mentioned, the rent is significantly higher than what we have as a rent, but our rents are always applied, or not always, but mostly applied from model generated rents.
Okay.
So our model is generating a rent lower than what is being reported to be being paid.
Would this rent of $15 have gone into the model?
It would, yes.
It would, okay. Are you aware of any of the background of this one's been an appeal forever, any of the background behind that release at all?
I'm not aware of,
Thank you.
I'm not aware of the background to this building.
Okay, and the building, it's I guess some sort of machine shop with repair. Are any of your comparables of similar nature with I guess dirty workshops with that use oil or repair anything of that nature, or are they all mostly warehousing or distribution?
I can't speak to the uses. I'm uncertain of each individual tenant or what they're
Sure.
doing.
No worries. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do have a question with respect to the premises as a whole. Are there multiple tenants in this residence or residence in this building, or just the Watrous Power Systems? Because I see the Wajax, and I'm aware a little bit of the structure of the corporations, but
we have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But no, I'm just wondering how many tenants.
We have the building listed as a single tenant building.
Okay.
I'm just looking up the square footage to confirm if they're using the entire square footage of the building, but yes, 29,730, which is what I have. Yeah, so they are the lone tenant for the building.
Okay, and there's office components in this building as well, is there not?
It appears to have both office and warehouse, just added as one square footage.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
I thank you. Mr. Gretchen, just offhand, if there's a lease in place on the subject property, why wouldn't you go to the $15 a square foot rate rather than the model of 921?
I think I mentioned it in one of the previous properties, but we don't apply the lease in place or the actual subject rent to the property. It's rather the model rent. So what the building or comparable buildings are receiving as rents. So that kind of derives where the model is. So there, based on this, we have 7 comparables. You'll see there is a range in rents, and that range kind of affects the model based on all the income expenses that we're receiving and the actual rents being paid. So in essence, we're applying the model rent, not the subject lease rent.
Yeah, but if the rent is $15, why wouldn't you apply $15?
As mentioned, we don't.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, I'm not certain as to. Those rents are reported to us through income and expense and can change. So I mentioned I have not inspected this property. It could be that the building owner has, well-maintained, added things that we are unaware of or haven't been added to the property characteristics, and that is why it's not achieving or pulling a higher rent. But based on the property characteristics we have in our system, the model applies a $9.21 rent to the current condition or state. So whether an increase to effective age is needed or added space, et cetera, this is based off of what we have in our records. So for this property, maybe an inspection is needed to figure why the the rent is so much higher than our model rent, but for that, I'm uncertain.
All right, I thank you, Mr. Gretchen. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. The model rent of 15, or the rent of $15 is an actual paid rent. It is, however, a national average. So the $15 is the same across Canada for this property and this tenant. So you're looking at a national average that would include Toronto properties that could be renting for twice the size at $30, give or take. Where we're looking at something closer to $7, which would be closer to the actual market value in the city. This is not. It's a rough and not manufacturing. It's a rough repair shop. They repair equipment in here. $15 is in no way indicative of market value. I think if this isn't the model, then in some ways we're using rents from Toronto that are influencing the model, because realistically this is a $15 across everything, and we would be at the bottom of that average for sure. We've applied 7 being a bit newer, 2009. I think realistically, the property like this with it's a rough shop in the back, and then you're a bit of a showroom style quality in the front. They do have offices in the room, and then it's a bit of like a retail operation at the front. So probably about a 50-50 split between rough industrial and industrial style retail. In terms of rent, I would honestly contend that most of ours are of better quality. We're looking at a lot of ours are flex warehouses, and I think too a lot of the ones that go into the city assessment are the same. Harder to find something of this size and age that is a workshop like this. Generally, you'll see a lot older and smaller ones that are across the city. But we are just requesting 7 for today. Thank you. And that for a total of $275, $280.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Gretchen, questions of Mr. Newfield?
I guess my only, not even a question, is just to state that he mentioned something about Toronto rents, but our market model would only be pulling from the Winnipeg rents based off of income expense and information that we've received comparable to this subject property here in Winnipeg. So our 921 rent would be fitting for the comparables I provided between $9 and $11.45, which are all below the $15 rent that's being paid. And that's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Yes, in terms of the net rent you're using, I see you have the comps for the small industrial rentals and the comps for I'm just looking for your heading here, for the industrial rental rates. So you're using 7, like, is that primarily based on the comps you've provided? Maybe if you could explain just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean,
the
7 was based on being a bit higher quality than a lot of the ones, or sorry, newer than the ones that we have. I think it's what was I seeing? On that 1475. Let me just quickly. Yeah, I mean, 7 was based. It went higher than our 5 or 6s because of the age, but lower than newer ones of similar because of the quality of the building, essentially. Nothing to really pinpoint. I know there's no rents that I can really pick out of our table that would accurately represent this property.
So it's kind of a judgment call based on the whole compendium of comps.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mahone?
Just a question about the structure. You indicated this was a cross Canada rate that had been agreed to. The parent company has dozens of offices across North North America, especially northern US. Is it the parent company who owns all of the premises as well?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if if they have every single Wajax or every tenancy of Wajax, but they do have multiple tenancies that are Wajax across the country, and I actually do believe in the U.S. as well. I think this is a Canadian only deal, but the building owner does have multiple Wajaxes in his buildings across the country.
Okay, and as the head office, it would have sales offices, training facilities, as a regional head office, so it might be a nicer fit than some of the other industrials.
Yeah, I mean there would be multiple different types of properties within that, and I think too the biggest thing would be the different markets in different cities. I think Winnipeg is a much we're getting stronger recently, but we are generally renting lower and capping higher than most of the rest of the country, except for maybe some parts of Saskatchewan and rural Alberta.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
I thank you. Summation of the party?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you.
We'll go to 472 Dufferin Avenue. Mr. Assessor, whenever you're ready.
Okay. File number. What's going on here? Just gonna close that. There we go. File number is 22-4323. Roll year is 2023. Address 472 Dufferin Avenue, and the business assessment ID is 19394. The total ARV is 124,200. Total area of the premise is 14,797 square feet, and the overall ARV is $8.39. We do have a recommended value for the property. The ARV being a revised ARV being 113,220 with a rent of $5.30. And this would be based on follow through from the realty. So I would like to conclude with my recommendation of 113,220.
Sorry. Mr. Neufeld, are you aware of the recommendation and are you in agreement?
Yes, and yes. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Davidson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Bahone?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Gretchen, I assume it is based on a base rent of $530.
Correct. Yeah, the base rent is $530.
And the OC at $250.
Occupancy wouldn't have changed.
Okay. Okay, but it's 34,818 roughly.
Give me just 1 second.
Yeah, because this is in Mr. Neufeld's presentation anyways. That's I mean, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I looked at his and I think it's just a rounding thing where we're $20.
Okay.
We're $20 off on the ARV.
So the recommendation is accepted by the applicant.
Yes.
All right. So we'll go to the final property, which is 121 Gomez Street. Mr. Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
All right. The file number for this property is 22-4672. Roll year 2023, address 121 Gomez Street, and the business assessment ID is 20430. The total annual rental value is $267,180. Total area of 64,855 square feet, and an overall ARV of $4.12 per square foot. So we do have the entire premise of 64,855 square feet and a base rent applied of $1.97. And there is no air conditioning applied in the occupancy costs for this building or this premise. I do have 3 rent comparables only for this premise. They are lease start dates between 2017 and 2018 with terms between 5 and 20 years and areas between 28 and 34,000 square feet, and a rent of between $1.50 and $2.54 per square foot. My second page shows the map of the subject, which is located in central Winnipeg, close to downtown. And my page 3 includes the overhead photo of the building and lot. And that concludes my presentation for 121 Gomez Street.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yeah. Have you seen any pictures of inside?
I have not.
No. Okay. I guess what would would you agree that the realty went to the land value or something along those lines?
I'm uncertain of the realty decision.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Is the $1.97 net rent, is that aligned with the realty assessment?
Just quickly pulling up to see what the realty decision was here. $2023 was a board decrease. I believe the rent would be, I'm not for certain, but I believe the rent would be derived based on the realty decision, correct?
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Sorry.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
Just, this is I guess the other facility that's related to Tough Duck that we were talking about that moved to Inkster. Is that correct? Is this Gomez resident or Gomez premises we were talking about?
I believe so. Whether they have the same, I'm just pulling it up here. Is it the same operating name or not? Yeah, Richelieu Manufacturing.
Okay. And is this in use right now, or do you know?
They are occupying the space, yeah.
Okay.
But what exactly they're using it for, I'm not sure if it's just storage or, I mean, they do have a number of buildings in the city, so what they use each one for, I'm uncertain of. But they do have occupancy for 64,855 square feet.
Thank you. I don't have anything else, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Just a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Yep.
You, Mr. Sesser, you had mentioned that the rent went from realty. The realty decision was reduced, was it not?
As mentioned, I didn't have the realty decision, but when I pulled up the property, normally that base rent that we have in our brief is a model-driven rent, and I am seeing that the rent has been overridden. So,
okay, so what,
197 is not a model rent. 197 was applied to this property. So as mentioned, I'm uncertain of the realty appeals and decisions, but I do see that someone has gone in and applied a rent other than model rent.
And could that have been done like in the past? Is that an override that was done like recently, or?
Back just to 20.
The reason I asked, I mean, the realty was reduced from 779 to 530.
There was no override in place for 2022, so this would be specific to 2023.
Okay, so then, but the business tax didn't get adjusted ever. So I'm just wondering if that was a new rent, then wouldn't the assessment have gone down?
I don't know when the appeal was for this, but if the appeal was done and the decision was made, the rent could have been changed prior to the mail out of business taxes. So what you appealed could actually be already a lowered rent.
And okay, and then so do we have that old rent that like to confirm that or because that just doesn't. That's
what
not
do
really,
you mean? Do we have it?
like, what has changed? Like if the rent was overridden, what was there an original rent that was in place that was about to go out in this business tax? It's just I don't see there being any sort of logic to follow through from that realty decision is all. So I can't see how they would have adjusted that rent. And I'm just curious if maybe it was adjusted to the same amount or what it was prior to the 197.
Yeah, I can't speak to the realty appeal. I'm unaware of
Okay.
that. But as I mentioned, I am seeing an overridden rent. So
Okay.
the rent has already been reduced.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
We're waiting for your presentation.
Oh, of course. Okay. First off, when this brief was done, the person who had done this thought this was empty. It is not empty. I am changing my request up much higher than zero. We will be requesting a rent of $1.50. And I'm mostly actually just taking that. The assessor has Matador converters at 1460 Inkster at $1.50. I think that that Matador converters, it's a storage rent essentially on an Inkster. I think it's similar in size. This building is actually, it's about 240,000 square feet. In 2018, I want to say 2018, we inspected it to determine that they were only actually using 64,855, and that was me and an assessor actually just going through the areas and determining what it was. It's unfortunate that there weren't pictures included in this because they would be very helpful for it. This building has a considerable amount of knob and tube, a lot of asbestos, and essentially just a lot of deferred maintenance since it was built in 1910. What happened is the Disraeli freeway was put in, and if you can see on my page 2, it's not really a clean cut out of this property. They essentially took all the way up to their building. So they didn't take any of the building, but they took away so much land. And the Disraeli freeway actually has caused a considerable amount of shifting in this building. It's a huge long expropriation where there's engineers reports and not really something we want to get into at a quick hearing like this, but I guess it should have been provided to be helpful. But it's they essentially had a huge operation in here. Once the Disraeli freeway went in, the engineer determined that the asbestos in all the building itself was just unreliable. A failure could just happen at any point. So it came to a point where it was too risky to have that much operation in there. So they did move a huge chunk out to 1650 Inkster. They are still using this as storage. There aren't people here on a regular basis, though. You couldn't really have somebody working here constantly. I don't think it would. It would be legal, but it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be good practice generally, just because of the asbestos and the issues that it's having. So essentially, this is a storage for clothing, goes in and out, and that's it. The rent, like I said, was 150. I think that coming from the assessor's brief, I actually really think that rent that should be in our tables, quite frankly. So our request, and this would just be pretty much exactly the same as 2020. I guess just the difference would be the cost. So our final request is $236,720. And the 2020 is 234. Realistically, this building went to land value. I think once the Disraeli freeway went in, this building stopped appreciating in value completely. Maybe even before that. It's a lot of issues with this building. It's to a point where demolishing it would be far more expensive than the value that you would get out of the existing land. I think it's going to sit there as a poor storage for a long time, and there's not really going to be many other uses for it. If this area were revitalized, I think that's a big if. As we probably all know, the Sutherland Higgins area, then potentially there would be some value in this land to make this knock down, but that is such a huge if, and there's absolutely no reason to think that would happen in a near future. The rent, I mean, business tax generally, I think they almost go higher in business tax here than the realty. I think the tax rate, yeah, it might actually be paying higher business taxes than property taxes, and that actually I do think that makes sense. They are operating it as storage. The building is worthless. It's less than worthless. It's a detriment, but it is being operated in a business. So we are comfortable putting a nominal rent on it, and $1.50 I think is you're not going to find a rent like this that's this poor. Again, I wish I had the pictures, but you're not going to find something that is of this quality to rent. I think this would be lower than anything you could possibly see, just based on condition and asbestos and all the other issues. So my final request again, $236,720. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, give me that figure one more time.
$236,720. And I might have my rounding off by.
Okay, we can check that.
Yeah.
I thank you. Mr. Gretchen, questions of Mr. Newfield?
No questions, but as mentioned, I did not have a chance to inspect this property, so I can't speak to his quality, condition, what the photos would have shown. But after a couple of his points there, I did try to look into a bit. As mentioned, I can't really speak to the appeals or anything, but I'm looking at a note here, and it is saying that, as I mentioned, our rents are generated based on the characteristics of the building in addition to comparables. So they'll take, what the building has or doesn't have, ceiling height, condition, quality, et cetera, into account. And in this case, the condition or the, changed premise quality to poor. So that's already reflected. Poor is as low as it goes here, and changed investment rank to poor as well. So both of those are reflected, and then the override is still being applied separate from that. So, I mean, our rent at $1.97, his request at $1.50. Yeah, I mean, as also noted, they just, I only had those three comparables. So this one was, I guess, up to the board here. I don't have any further questions.
If I could just have a follow-up question to that, I think there is just a bit of statement, which I'm okay with. If I could ask a question.
That's fine. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you'd mentioned that this is the model has gone to poor, which is fair, and I think that makes sense. But would any of your comparables necessarily be this poor? Because I don't necessarily think that you'd be renting at this.
As mentioned, I don't know. I haven't inspected the comparable properties. I also noted I only have three, which usually I'm producing 4, 7.
Okay. Yeah, of course. And
so
and
based on comparables, like I'm assuming I'm not finding anything in the poor quality that's reflective of this property. So either the rents were just significantly higher because we didn't have anything to relate to this quality of condition, but I can't speak to it because I haven't seen personally.
Okay, and I would just add to that then I think the rents that are actually true rents that are going to the city for data would not be of this poor quality. The $1.50 that I picked was the Matador converters from the assessor's rent. It's a rough storage, but I would contend that this is worse quality than that one that is achieving $1.50. I think this would be with an exception of 1350 Saskatchewan, which has a smelter in the middle of it, this is the worst building in the city that I've ever inspected. And again, it's unfortunate that I don't have pictures because I don't think it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm really not. And then we presented land value on this forever, and we've always got considerable realty reductions. And I think that in 2023, the same case, it was a land-based decision.
Ms. Davidson, questions of Mr. Newfield?
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
Just a question with respect to some of the comps that you've used. I see there's one at 92 Gomez, so that's just across the street, I guess, in 121 Gomez, considerably smaller square footage, and that it's just under 18,000 square feet. Do you know anything about the condition of that? Is it?
Yeah, they are actually similar. I have inspected 92 Gomez. I believe 1.1 was a grow up. I think that second floor one might have been. I don't know if it is anymore. Very similar quality. It is across the street. Similar. I don't think they have condition issues because of this the Disraeli quite, because this one, ours, has just been falling apart from the ground shaking. But the reason I didn't overly rely on them is because they are older. I think these are all year to years. We haven't verified them recently, but I didn't put a huge amount of weight into them for that reason. But I think one that does actually, and I alluded to it with an earlier property, is the 312 William. That one's a bit newer. I would say that's a much better location. It's in the Exchange, and that's would be a similar interior that you're kind of dealing with or similar usage, and that would be a storage facility, and that's really all you could really put in there. And that's what they're the city of Winnipeg rent there. The cow, as a comment, means that it came from the city of Winnipeg at $1.11. Okay, but yeah, the Gomez similar. I think if we had updated rents, I would be looking at them, although the size difference is quite dramatically different.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That was all I had.
Sorry.
I'm just
no. Mr. Newfield, you said you wanted to use the $1.50.
Yeah.
In the square foot rate, okay, and apply the OC on of close to 140,000. So this is how you got up to the 236,720.
Yes, sorry, our costs are identical. That's I'll be using the 139 that the city is using. We have that was inspected and we determined that was, so the rent.
Why? Okay, my question is, why are you using? I mean, this place, like you said, I read through the notes and it's got asbestos on the site, and it's only used for storage.
Correct.
Okay.
I think, this property in the past, I think I could be wrong, but I thought the city's appealed it once. We've had a lot of back and forth. I think at some point its business assessment was about $600,000. We had an assessor inspect it and determined that they weren't using a lot of it. I think we're sort of in a somewhat of just an agreement to apply some sort of rent to it. I don't think you could legally rent this. I think they would have the PP&D wouldn't let them. So it's as an owner occupant. Go ahead. You
had mentioned also that the building's a lot bigger, but this is only usable space, or
no, it's only used space. I mean, I would contend none of it's usable in the term that we argue, that when we say usable in terms of what can be assessed, but it is being used. So it's being used as storage, the 64,000. I can try to find the actual area.
I have a gross.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please.
gross area of 132,578. But I have the premise area as 64,855. Sorry, do you want me to repeat that?
Oh, that's fine. No, it's fine.
Yeah, so I have a gross area of 132,578, the premise area of only 64,855. As Mr. Neufeld has mentioned, someone from our department did go inspect and determine what was being used. We don't have any other tenants in this building. So whether what he's saying is it's not leasable or not usable, I'm uncertain. But as mentioned, it's only a portion of the building that is being assessed for business tax based on their use here.
All right. I think that's all the questions I have. Submission, either party?
I'm okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. That's great.
All right, Mr. Neufeld, I thank you very kindly for your presentations and results very soon. Mr. Gretchen, thank you very kindly for your expediency and have a good day. And we have heard all the scheduled items and this hearing is now adjourned.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Yeah,
Everybody have a good day. Thank you.